Welcome to Narrowboat that James built. Hope you're well, thanks for joining me. Hope you guys had a very nice Christmas, whatever you were doing. Mine was all right, a couple of days without the kids, a couple of days with them. And now I'm back on the boat. And before I do the electrics, which is kind of the next big thing, I just want to get some kind of boards up on the end here and start finishing this wall. So this is the bow bulkhead I need to now clad. I've got some offcuts of 9mm ply. This is obviously going to be hidden by cupboards. Rob's on his way over. He's going to help me sort out the mess, which is all this 12-volt lighting cables here in the bow of the boat, and then I can sort out the wall and make it look a little bit like that with some kind of access to some of these electrics up here, because then I need to put switches up here as well. So we'll sort all that out and that'll look good. Let's crack on. Right, so we've got all the cables coming through a hole. Now we can put in the DIN rail and start putting the connections together. That's already looking a damn sight neater. So whilst Rob's up in the bow bedroom, I'm going to try to make a little panel thing here using some bits of perspex and some whatever they're called, to make a mounting plate for the two switches which need to go in the electrics cupboard up in the bow bedroom. Now I've taken the casing off to the electrics cupboard. My first job is really to neaten up all the 12-volt lighting cables coming down through the ceiling panels. Okay, so with Rob's help yesterday, I managed to label up most of the cables, and we've routed them up round to there to this kind of in and out feed for all the 12-volt lighting cables. So they're all coming through the ceiling, so it made sense to kind of put it at the top. This is going to be fairly unusable space anyway, because there's just not enough room in there for the Victron equipment. So I thought it'd be good just to kind of get it out the way, and then it kind of leaves enough space on that wall and on that wall there for the Victron stuff. Or the main one is the inverter charger, which can either go on that wall there if I straighten that bit up and kind of put on some kind of bracket, or it can go onto that wall there. But now all those cables are out of the way. Obviously this is still a temporary solution. It's going to, all those cables are going to feed into a fused panel, and then from there we're going to the switches. So I might have to take those Vitas cables out of the way and then look at where I can mount the inverter. This got delivered to my parents' house on Christmas Eve. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing this. This is my inverter charger. So for those that don't know, an inverter charger takes my 12-volt battery supply, which is actually in series, so it's 24-volt, but it converts the 24-volt battery supply into 240-volt mains electric. And it is actually quite big in terms of, not just in terms of what it can output, but its physical size is kind of a little bit bigger than I anticipated. So I'm a bit anxious to see whether it's going to fit in the area that I had designed for it. But I'm quite excited to see it. Alright, so this is the Multiplus 2, so this is their second generation of Multiplus. Okay, yeah, now that looks an okay size, that's not too scary. some meaty instruction manual. Happy days. There's a wall bracket. This is the bit I'm nervous about. I think this thing's 30 kilos. To mount that on the wall is a bit scary. But yeah, it weighs a sodding ton. Right, let me get this out and put it over there so you can see it. Right, there she is. What a beaut. It's a decent bit of kit, but it is bloody heavy. So I think I'm going to have to work out the best way to mount it, because obviously it's going to be mounted on a sloping wall. So I think I'm going to have to make some vertical platform for it to be bolted to. Once you take the plate off, which is just removal of a couple of screws, it exposes all the terminal ends here at the bottom. So I've got to make sure I mount it with ample of room at the bottom to intake all the cables, but you've got the negative there and the positive for the DC side of it. And then on this side here is the AC in and out. The inverter comes with a steel back plate, which obviously needs to be secured to the wall, and then the inverter kind of hangs off that angled bit there on the bracket, and then it's secured in place with a couple of bolts at the bottom. So it's basically just hanging, and that's my worry, is basically the best way to secure this onto the wall. Right, that's the area I've got marked out to take in the Multi-Plus 2 to aid its cooling and to give it a bit of a more solid mount. I'm going to put a couple of bits of 18mm ply going across there, so I can mount it to it, so the back of it's kind of got a bit of a gap behind it to just increase air circulation around it. All right, I've had to shift this down. Time was against me because obviously the glue was setting, so I've re-glued and screwed it there. This allows me that space up there where I can place the MPPT, because obviously this sticks out quite far and it renders quite a lot of that unusable, and the MPPT is quite big. So yeah, it's kind of got a decent space there, and it's kind of nice and high up, so it means I can get my solar disconnect and everything up there as well. Right, now I've got to put in the lower rail, and then I can see if Rob's around to help me put the inverter in place. This is working out. It's okay, it's really sturdy on there. So I've got the upper bracket on and a lower support, so I've just gone in with the two fixings that came with the inverter. Okay, it's been a day and the inverter is still hanging on the wall, so I'm going to take this as a good sign. Rob and I have been talking about the space above it now, where I did have it earmarked for the solar charger controller, but I think that's going to be down here now, and up here is going to be some of the gubbins for the AC circuits, because I'm going to need circuit breakers and isolators and various bits and pieces, and all the cabling for the DC side of it and the 12-volt side, because I'm going to need the charger. What's this one? No, this is the converter. I'm going to need that somewhere up there, which converts the 24 volt down to 12, so all of this stuff here works. Now the inverter's in its position, I need to work out the position for this, which is the Lynx distributor. So this essentially takes power from the batteries and distributes it via these ports here, which is negative and positive DC, and this feeds various things. It can also take power in as well, so the solar goes into this, and the Orion, so the engine charging goes into this as well, and this feeds the battery. So this needs to be positioned kind of sensibly so that the cable runs work, and the biggest cables are the ones that feed this from the batteries. So they're 95mm cables, and again 95mm cables going from this to the inverter. All the other cables are smaller cables and therefore a bit more manageable, so, and cheaper. So I've just got to position this right so my cable lengths are as good as they can be. Right, I'm going about working out how to mount this Lynx distributor. I'm thinking about putting it on a piece of 18mm ply, and then I can affix that to the back wall. So that'll be quite straightforward enough if I make some room on it on the side. That's not my problem. My problem is, you'll see, so on the positive side here, I've put the isolator switch, but that's clamped straight onto the bar there. And obviously it's got a void, so I was going to fill that void just with a bit of 18mm ply so I can bolt that to it. That's all quite nice and sturdy. That's good. On the negative is where this comes, which is the smart shunt, and that goes on straight to there. But you'll see, this is my problem, is that they don't quite line up. This has got to be flat. I'd have thought that they'd have made it so that was the right height. It's all Victron stuff. So I'm going to have to lower the height of that so it kind of lines up nicely. So I'm going to route out a little section under here so that bit can sit in, and it kind of will keep it nice and level and neat then. The other way I could do it is shimmy that up a bit, but that means I've got to then shimmy that up a bit, so it's easier to probably excavate a bit down there, I reckon. So now I've worked out to get that to the right height. Now that piece there sits on there, so I've now got to excavate a little bit more to enable that all to sit nice and flush. Okay, that works now. So it's all nice and level. So it means I can just mount this piece to the wall. So I'll cut it there. Yeah, that'll work fine. Right, I've started to mount all this stuff. Put a little bit of varnish on that just to kind of keep it nice. That goes over there and kind of perfectly slides onto both of them. Happy days. All right, now it's all mounted. That bolt there is only hand tightened, because obviously I'm going to have to probably take it apart to put everything on the distributor, but it's ready to go and put up on the wall. And I'm thinking it's basically have to go somewhere between the batteries and the inverter, so the cables need to come down to there. Those are the two pipes for the calorifier from the Vitas, so obviously that's going to be water, so I'm going to remove those and just basically they're not connected to the engine, so I'm going to take them out and move them to those two holes there so that the water system is completely away from the electrics. And those two grey cable pipes, which you might see there, which were ready to take in this connection, I'll just remove them out and they'll start down there. So yeah, I can now go about placing the Lynx distributor block on the wall. Right, I've got rid of those pipes coming from the calorifier beforehand, so they've all been retracted, and I've now moved the Lynx distributor over a little bit. It's got the isolation switch in quite a good place because this is going to be the top step. So all I need to do to isolate the batteries is move that forwards a bit and turn it off. So that's quite good. Next up, I need to make a similar kind of bracket to take in the MPPT, which is going to go in this area here. And this is kind of what I've come up with. So if I had it on brackets like that, which take into account the angle, that can sit on it quite nicely. And then I just get some bits of ply, top and bottom, to anchor this bit to, and then I can screw it to the wall in various places. It kind of distributes the kind of the weight of it a bit more. And then obviously it's got a bit of room underneath for the heatsink, kind of just gives it a bit more breathing space, gets it off the wall quite a bit. Here's the bracket I've made. It's pretty straightforward, but it kind of disperses the weight kind of quite evenly across it all. So I can mount that to the wall, and then it's got some threaded inserts that I can just kind of put the MPPT on quite easily, just with bolts. Okay, that's not going anywhere. Good. Right, now I can get the solar charger mounted on the wall. Right, my solar charger is on the wall. Those bolts are quite easy to take out, so I can remove this quite easily when I've got to do the cabling. But before I do any of that, What have I got to do next down here? I need to kind of build up this area. I've got to take out those grey pipes which were from the calorifier, so I've got to remove them. I've got to take the batteries out and kind of build up an area for this, so all of that's kind of eclipsed, and that's going to give, I need to kind of come up to the same height as where the batteries are. So I need to make a false floor there, leaving enough room for me to still get my anchor, my big power station thing in there. So yeah, that's the plan. I've got to do all that before I run the cables. Right, I've realised I can now move the batteries out this way through this cupboard, or actually out through the step this way. So it means I can build something here to take in extra cables and to protect some areas down there without worrying about getting the batteries out at some other stage. I've also taken the chance just to neaten up some of those cables which were going underneath there, because I've removed the pipes, and I've gone in with a net with another piece of Arctic blue, another length of that, which is all the way to the calorifier, because I think the calorifier could have its own, could benefit from having its own separate circuit basically, so it's not connected to anything else. So I've put that there, so yeah, I can run it up to the bedroom. Right, now the batteries are in place, I've got this supporting beam here just gluing in place. It's got me though looking at my setup for the Lynx distributor, and I'm thinking for ease of cables and to protect a little bit from arcing, I might think about orientating the smart shunt down, so kind of redoing the board so it's facing down. It will increase the gap between the positive and the negative there, but it will also mean that my cable run coming from the batteries will be a little bit easier, I'm thinking. So yeah, I might do that. I'm going to redo that board then. Luckily I haven't glued that one on. I'm glad I'm doing this, because it's always irked me somewhat that there are some indicator lights on the smart shunt there which I can't see when it's in this orientation, and the writing up there, the battery minus and the load minus, is kind of upside down. So if I do it this way, at least it's gonna look better. So I'm just undoing the mounting screws now, and then yeah, I can start taking it apart. I've got to route out this section here, much like I've done on that one there, but different orientation. This is the fixed base router, which is not ideal for this, so I've basically got to plunge it down, so it's a little bit sketchy that bit, but once it's in, it's fine. Right. Yeah, that's good. Now this is in place, I'm much happy with that. You can see the lights on it, the status light and the error light. It's now giving me a chance to reroute these cables. So these two go to the positive and negative on the battery terminals, and this one here, the black one, is a comms cable. So I'm thinking just kind of a neat way of routing those cables. So these come down here to the battery. Yeah, I'm much happy about how this has been routed and put in place. So now I can go and put the Lynx distributor back on and secure the isolation switch. So there's the newly mounted Lynx distributor on the wall with those two cables going down to the batteries, and I've made this kind of arrangement here so I can get a piece of board to sit on there. It takes into account the fuse, so I've got a fuse holder there to go on the positive connection, and then the cables go, the positive cable will go up on a nice curve round to there, and the negative will come from there on a curve kind of going round to the smart shunt there, and then they will be nicely protected. So I'll put a board on top of that and a board on top of that, and that leaves me enough room there for my big power station. Now I need to start thinking about the positioning for the Orion 122415. So this takes the 12 volt battery supply from the engine, which is just under there. So that's the 12. It steps it up to 24, and it charges at only 15 amps. So it's not very much. There is a new one coming out of this, which is the Orion XS, which I might upgrade to one day, and that outputs at 50 amps. But at the moment, this is 15. So obviously, when I'm running the engine, it will be charging it. But I'm not really counting on engine running to do this, because at 15 amps, it's going to take months. But it'll be at least it'll be doing something when the engine's running. Right, there we go. This is good one-handed operation. That's important. Well, it would be if I had that cable out of the way. There we go. Yeah, much better. Now, obviously, the battery cable, I'll have to make a cut in there for the battery cables to come up nicely, but it just means, yeah, I think it'll look quite neat just with two cables coming up from there. To make sense of the big cables now, this one here is going to be the main earth. So that's going to go from the Vetus, which is the earthing of the boat, I'm guessing. So this is a 35mm cable. It's going to go through that hole there to a central earthing point somewhere, maybe there. And from there, it will earth to the Lynx distributor. The inverter is earth to that. The MPPT there, on that side there, that's earth to that. The Orion is earth to that. That Orion is going to be earth to it as well. So those are the main components. Then kind of I've got a main earth coming in. This cable here is going to be the one that goes from the Orion to the alternator. These are going to be the the battery cables coming from these batteries out here into the isolator switch and the smart shunt. So the cable I'm going to make up now, and I haven't done this before, is the two sets of cables which go from the Lynx distributor up to the inverter. That's right, two sets of cables, so that's 2 negative and 2 positive. I could possibly get away with doing a 4A gauge cable, which is I think 120mm squared cable. But because it carries 400 amps, the inverters that the draw through this cable. So the instructions on the Multi Plus 2 suggest using 2 negative at 70mm and 2 positive at 70mm. And obviously that occupies 2 spaces on the Lynx distributor, which isn't ideal because I've got more things to come off it than that. So the inverter is going to occupy 2 spaces, and I've got the MPPT occupying 1 space, the Orion occupying the final space, but I've still got the converter to come off it, which then takes 24 down to 12 volt. But I've got a, probably don't have it to hand, but I've got a fuse which can bolt onto the end of it, so I can extend, I can put an extension on the end of the Lynx distributor. So I'll come to that, which might get in the way of this cable run. So that's why I'm going to do this now. And I've said, never done this before, but these are the lugs I'm using. So these are 70 by 8s. So just got to trim this off. And then I've got one of these things, a hydraulic crimping tool. This has been lent to me by my friend Joe. I've got a 35mm one on there, so I need to change that for 70mm. So how does this 70mm? That looks like a big good one. 50, 70, right. So those 35s come out. and go into there, and the 70s go in. Right, now I need to take off a little bit of the insulation. Knife. Okay. Good. And you put that through there, and then goes that way. Turn it on. There we go. Release that. Just check it's nice and tight. That's going nowhere. Good. Right, now I can offer it up and check it for length. And rather annoyingly, I've only got red heat shrink of the right size, but before I put it up, I'm going to put the heat shrink on it. There we go. Right, I put some black insulation tape on there so there's no confusing of anything. Now I've got to cut it here. I've made a mark with pencil line. I've offered it up, given myself an extra inch of play. These are the best tools I've got to cut it, although I haven't tried it yet. Well, I kind of have, to be honest, but I mullered the end of that, so I'm hoping for a nicer job here. Oh, decent. Oh, okay, yeah, I made a bit of a pig's ear that first time. Okay, that's worked all right. Hopefully I've got enough room for two of them. Oh, fuck. One really good tip I've seen on all the thousands of hours of YouTube videos I've watched about Victron setups, a decent tip I found is that big chunky cable likes to sit kind of comfortably. It's got its own particular way. So when you're crimping it up, what I've done there is I've marked on a line on the crimp and the cable. So I know that's how the crimp should be sitting, so it's nice and comfortable when it goes on the device, so that when I crimp it, I can make sure those lines are matching, and I know I'll be getting it right, and the cable won't be twisting uncomfortably. Actually, the sizing of those cables worked out fine. So those are the two negatives. Now I've just got to do the two positives, which go from those 2 points there up to those 2 points in there. 4 DC cables are now attached to the inverter, and they route kind of quite nicely down there to the Lynx distributor. You'll see I've put on the fuse extension there, which will the converter will take that. So it's still got two slots here, so one for the MPPT and one for the Orion Smart DC to DC charger. Right, cases are back on. Neated up the cables a little bit. I'm happy with that install. I'm now gonna start work on the solar cables, which is the next one over. I can route them round there, round the back of the inverter, so they come up to there. And the instructions on the MPPT charger controller from Victron tell me to use a 35 mm squared cable, so that's what I'm going to use. Right, I've made up these solar charger cables. I haven't got those ends yet because those are the ends that need some kind of square ferrules which go into the MPPT charger. So I've got those ends which go onto the distributor. But I've kind of put a lot of this off for a while because, you know, not having all the bits and stuff, but I kind of think actually it's such a massive process doing this electrical installation, so it's going to be bit by bit anyway. So now I've made a progress on it. It's just, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. So more progress shall be made over the next couple of weeks really, and hopefully get the electrical installation done and the water installation done by the end of Jan. That's the plan. So thank you so much for watching. Till next time, take care. Bye bye.